Hey guys, my name is Jake Corney here with Jazz Texas. Today we're going to go over how we create a new cocktail menu and how we balance a cocktail. But first you have to think about the science behind flavors and tastes and how you're actually going to balance something. And so we have a few different elements here that the tongue can pick up. So the first basic 4 things that your tongue can taste are right here in front of us. We have sugar, which is going to give you that sweetness. We have citrus, which is that acidity, that vinegar kind of flavor. Then you also have salt, which is going to add a saltiness as a spice. And then as for bitterness, you can often use espresso beans. Coffee is a bitter substance. And then there's a couple other flavors that have been introduced to the palate that the tongue can pick up. And we have the next one that came down the chain, which is spicy, jalapenos, crushed peppers, things like that. And then a really fun one that the Japanese discovered, which is more of a recent one, is umami. And here we have some soy sauce. Umami is the flavor of fats or something that's very savory. You think about like a roast beef or seaweed for that matter, and it kind of has that mouth-watery kind of thing you can't explain. That's what we call umami, which scientists have discovered is an actual flavor. And the last one, the most recent one, that scientists have kind of discovered as a sense for your tongue is starch. That's that very starchy, potato-esque substance that your tongue can kind of feel and pick up. So we have 7 items here. So going off the base and the very basic thing that you have behind a bar making a cocktail a lot of people know about is sweet and sour. Sweet and sour is the base to a lot of many classic recipes. And here we have a daiquiri. Daiquiri is white rum, which almost has an umami sweetness with the rum itself. And then you have some citrus to add your acidity and some sugar. And if you put those 3 things in balance, you come up with a cocktail which is known as the daiquiri. And when you combine those 3 things, we just call it a daiquiri. We don't call it rum, lime, sugar drink. It takes that form. So going off of this basic principle of combining 2 things on this flavor palette, if you will, and putting them in the right order, you can create balance. Now, when you get deeper into making cocktails or even cooking for that matter, you start to add more of these elements to make more complex flavors. The principle is the same with any one of these things I have in front of you. If I have salt and I have heat, you can balance those 2 things out if you put them together and balance them accordingly. So it's really fun when you start to add in different spirits, or it's the same principle of wine. Once you start adding those flavors and building upon it, it's almost endless. It's really amazing. And that's how we get started when we think about a cocktail that we want to make. Is it going to have umami flavors in it? Is it going to be primarily bitter? Or is it going to be a balance between all of these flavors, which is would be a very complex cocktail. Now, we can get into that a little bit more later down the road, but for today, we're just going to talk about the daiquiri, some easy recipe ingredients, and then also how we can pair them with food. And I have a really cool food demonstration I'm about to show you. So if you've ever heard of the term bittersweet, that's kind of what we're doing here. We have in front of us a piece of pecan pie and a Negroni. A Negroni is a classic cocktail that it's naturally a little more bitter, but it has sweet vermouth and Campari and gin and a little bit of an orange peel on top. So Campari is a very bitter liqueur. You have gin that's a little more herbal. You have a little bit of citrus, and you have the sweet vermouth, which adds a little more herbalness plus a little residual sweetness to the cocktail. So looking at this cocktail, we have bitterness with just a touch of sweetness, and you round it out with some herbalness. Now the pecan pie, on the other hand, the pecans actually have just a touch of bitterness, but it's primarily a sweet dish, as we know. There's a lot of residual sugar in it, but it's a balanced piece of dessert because you have an umami flavor, you have a little bit of bitterness, you have maybe a touch of saltiness, and primarily sweetness. So when you look at this dish, you think sweet. When you look at a Negroni, you think bitter. Bitter, sweet. Everything else that's in the cocktail is just going to add more flavors and complexity that's going to help balance out the other flavors and complexity that are in the pecan pie. So this is just a small example of things you can do when pairing cocktails with food or wine with food and things like that. And because there's so many cocktails out there, it should be very easy to get yourself a recipe on a cocktail that might be sweet if you're looking for something that's a spicy dish. That can pair well. If you're looking for something that's, you know, it has a really nice umami flavor, kind of savory, you might want to pair that with something that has citrus or maybe even some more saltiness to it. And that's how you start to combine flavors, and that's how we do it here at Jazz Texas when we're inventing new cocktail recipes and working with the kitchen and the dishes that we serve so we can give guests a better dining experience, something they might not normally would have had. So let's go ahead and try this out. All right. Sweet and spicy, cinnamon, things like that. And it seems like an odd pairing, but it's absolutely delicious. The sweetness gets cut by the bitterness, the herbalness gets added on to the spices that are in the pecan pie. There's a nice little bitterness that kind of rounds it out. It's one of my favorite things to eat, and I hope it becomes one of yours. And we'll see you next time here at Jazz Texas. Thank you.
Action!
And now we're going to talk about one of my favorite food pairings, a pecan pie and a Negroni. It's absolutely delicious.